Hello, beautiful souls. I am Valeria Maritza here at Healing Through You. I am an infinite being of light, and so are you. Today, my guest is Dr. Regina Gysel, and I was just having this chat with her before hitting record, and I think you're going to love her. So many things, so many things. I'm just going to bring her in and say hello and allow you to introduce yourself. Hi.
Hi, Valeria. Hello, everybody who is listening and watching us. My name is again Dr. Regina Gysel. I live in Switzerland, lived before for 20 years in the United States, mostly in California, where I got trained in what I'm doing right now, which is amino acid therapy.
Wow. And when you mention amino acid therapy to me, I'm like, okay, what is that? What does it do? Why do I need it? Or do I need it? So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Well, everybody has a brain, right?
Uh-huh.
And our brain runs on fuel, and also it uses so-called neurotransmitters. We can call them hormones, such
Mhm.
as serotonin and dopamine. I'm guessing everybody heard of those at least once, right?
Yes, yes.
So, serotonin is our own built-in natural antidepressant and is made of something. It's made of actually tryptophan, and tryptophan is an amino acid, and it's kind of amino acid which is called essential, meaning that we need to get it from outside. We cannot build it inside of us, right?
Mm.
You see where I'm heading? And
Yes, yes.
and dopamine is also built from amino acid. It's called L-phenylalanine. It's also essential amino acid, means also we need to get it from outside. We do get amino acids with food. This is what proteins are built of
Mhm.
from. Mhm.
So when you say you have to get it from outside, like like eating proteins, for example, I've done several types of fasting, like water fasting, and I know that at 48 hours the dopamine goes up, or like they say, like your happy mood comes back after 48 hours of fasting. How does that work if you're not actually putting it in?
Exactly. So, I think in the last maybe 50 years or so, our American diet changed a lot and it became really, they call it standard American diet. I would say it's a horrible American diet. So
Agreed.
it's full, it's full of like mostly garbage, and it's actually full of mostly carbs. And carbohydrate is totally non-essential nutrient, so it means we can totally live without it. But again, as we just talked about amino acids, which come from protein, there's some of them that are essential, which we must get from outside, just like maybe like vitamins. The vitamin concept is maybe more accepted, and people know that you need to get certain vitamins from with your food or as a supplements in order to function like properly, right?
Mhm.
So if you do not eat proper diet, proper human diet with sufficient amount of protein, or let's say you're a woman of birthing age, and let's say you give birth to one, two, three, four, five children. Well, sometimes it's even one is too much because again, if you do not get sufficient amount of nutrients, your baby just depletes you, and that's why it's not a secret that we have postpartum depression,
I was
just
just going
because
to ask
baby
you about that. I was going to ask
just
if
yeah,
it
well,
comes
just
from that.
serotonin naturally drops because we need tryptophan for not only for our brain, but we need for essential functions. Actually, in the 30s, back in the United States, they when they started commercially developing farming and growing animals, and they started feeding that stock with corn, they kind of noticed that chicken didn't grow that well, their feathers were not that happy, and same with all other, swine and cattle. And then they started looking into the feed that they were feeding, like corn, and corn is deficient in tryptophan and lysine. So when they started like researching and understanding that if you don't have one essential amino acid, you basically break the whole, downstream process of building different things. And of course, even baby cannot grow if all those amino acids, essential amino acids, are present. So we understand it for animals. We do supplement animals' feeds now with tryptophan, lysine, and other amino acids. But for humans, it's still not very much kind of like a common knowledge, right?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So, and I was going to ask you about that, the postpartum depression. I was like, oh, so does that mean that they can be preventable if we have the correct nutrients and all the things, that the baby's not depleting the mom?
Totally. So again, how many doctors would tell you, please watch your protein? It's really important. You're growing a baby inside of you. And again, protein, amino acids, those are all building blocks. You cannot build your baby out of sugar.
And the proteins, when you're talking about the proteins, does it have to be, can it be any protein? Can it be animal, and plant, or is one better than the other, or does it depend on the person?
Well, it's really easy answer because, well, humans were also animals, right? So
Yes.
if you're eating something alike, then
Hmm.
you're probably going to get the same type of nutrients that you build off and then you need. So red meat is considered to be most nutrient dense. And I just spoke of corn as being deficient in some amino acids. So that's why we have like staples in Mexican cuisine. It's like rice and beans. So you kind of try to compromise
Hmm.
and supplement one plant with the other, kind of to make it more complete. But if you can afford meat, it's a winning strategy. I would do that.
Yeah, I was thinking more of like people who are like vegans or vegetarians and they like purposely are staying away from the meat. Um, so like would they be able to get everything? Or I mean, I do know of a lot of people who are vegetarians who have actually eventually gotten ill somehow, and it feels like, oh, maybe that's because they're missing something.
Right, and in a kind of like health community that I belong to, it's carnivore. I'm on a carnivore diet myself. I started with the ketogenic diet, which is low carb, but very quickly, since I discovered carnivore, I'm like, this is ultimate diet, and I'll tell you why, I think so. So I ventured into a carnivore diet. And in that community, of course, we discuss not that we discuss, but some of the prominent leaders discuss vegan issue and they always kind of like cannot decide which was first, chicken
Yes.
or egg, or it was the mental issues that led them to switch their diet or vice versa. But there are studies that children with protein deficiencies, they have lower IQs and vice versa. If you would supplement a child in Africa with like an egg a day, their Q goes higher. So this is kind of like a self-deprivation. And I lived in California for quite some time. So I would see how vegan people look like and how, unfortunately, their children look like. They look extremely malnourished. And I do not know many vegetarians or vegans who are aware of those deficiencies in a kind of like proactive way. Let me work with a nutritionist or with physician. Let me check my labs. Let's see what's missing in my nutrition. How do I supplement that? So I rather hear about these people as exception, as anecdotes. Would you agree?
Yes, yes, for sure. I mean, I've always loved meat. I grew up like eating meat. I'm from Chile, and growing up, if you didn't have a piece of meat on your plate, that wasn't a complete meal. That's how I grew up.
Exactly.
And as I've grown older and, where I am now, I've cut back a lot. And I'm not really sure why I've cut back, but it's kind of like this is what's happening. And I'm like, but when I do get it, which is, maybe a couple times a week, I'm like, this is like I feel happy. Like it feels
Right.
like and
It's a
I
it's primal joy. Yes.
yes, and it also feels like it fills me up more. I feel more satisfied. I don't feel hungry right away. I remember when I went off the eggs in the morning and I started having oatmeal because it was good for you. And like an hour and a half later, I was hungry all the time. And then I would eat more. And then I'm like, okay, well, this is not working out for being healthy. Now I'm eating two breakfasts because I'm hungry.
And this is exactly what it is. Protein keeps your blood sugar levels straight during the day, and this is one of the like best advices I could give to you. Start your day with a high protein breakfast. You'll set yourself for success. Say for children, especially for children. After learning about importance of protein and meat, I changed my strategy with my two boys. And
Mhm.
if before I would serve them veggies first before, at the beginning of the dinner, now it's another way around. Please eat your meat first, and everything else is like a cherry on top.
I tell my son the same thing. And like when he's like, I'm full, I'm like, well, just at least finish the chicken, or at least finish that first.
Exactly, exactly. So it's a different concept than a Popeye with that spinach.
Yeah, amazing. So, tell us a little bit more about the biochemical imbalances that we are all carrying nowadays because of the deficiency in diets. And this is one of the things that you specialize in, right?
Correct. So if you take a typical woman, see, she's very susceptible to I would call it brainwashing because I'm a surgeon. So as I say, I'm a straight shooter, right?
Uh-huh.
Because it's really difficult to take away that ribeye from a man. Would you
Yes.
agree?
Yes.
But we kind of like, do as told. And typical woman, if you look in the United States, I still remember that, right? What does she eat for lunch? It's usually like chicken breast, right? Some broccolis or salad.
Hmm.
And even the chicken breast that you would eat, it's kind of like not a good portion of protein. So again, in breakfast, they're so bad now. Again, it's all carbs. It's cereals, muffins, well, different kinds of breads, right? And I think that, over a period of time, of course, the less protein we get, the more deficient we get. And, if we look at our children right now, a lot of children, and definitely my children as well, already at the young age were addicted to carbs, and, they would like demand their sweet cereals. Don't you think so?
Yeah, we've never been a big cereal family here, but yeah, like my son will be like, "Can I have some chocolate?" And then, "Oh, can I have this lollipop from Halloween or whatever?" And I'm like, "Do you notice how much sugar you're putting?" He's like, "I'm on vacation," right? So it's like the whole like this is my treat type of thing, type of like needing to give you some type of what do you call it? Like explanation. Like I
Right,
deserve this. And it's like, but you
right.
didn't do that before. Like, because it wasn't accessible as much as it is now, um, because it's older. So yeah, I am noticing that difference of like wanting the sugar.
Right, right. And here it kind of like, becomes a loop. So the less protein you get, the more deficient you get, and then the more deficient you get in certain nutrients, and I'm talking about essential amino acids, the more you are drawn to those sugary junk foods. And it could be not necessarily something sugary, but could be like junk foods in general. And it's a biochemical reaction, and it becomes harder and harder to resist.
Yes, so we were talking a little bit about sugar addiction before we hit record, and I was like, oh my gosh, that's me. I'm a total sugar addict. And I was sharing with you that I have done several diets and cleanses and fast, like water fast, and that once my body is off the sugar, I'm like, I feel better, I have more clarity, I think better, I have more energy, all the good things, right? And I'm not craving the sugar. But the second that I'm like, okay, let me have a piece of bread, right? Which here in America, all breads have sugar, unfortunately. Um, Whatever it is, or a piece of cookie. Then it's like I can't stop. Then I'm continuing and I have to have more, even though my brain, my knowledge says that's not good for you, or you were feeling so much better without it. Even though I know this and I've felt it in my body, it's like I cannot stop myself. So tell us a little bit more about this sugar addiction that so many of us are going through.
Well, this is a pretty much a typical presentation. I have one neurologist. I love his saying. He once said, "Biochemistry, meaning like brain biochemistry, drives or determines our behavior." So the example that you gave us right now, it's very telling. So you can be like very, how to say, highly like worked on, did lots of different things. You understand how cool and wonderful and fog-free you are without sugar. But the moment you get like a small bite of a cookie, everything goes, you fall off the wagon. And the
Yeah.
reason why it's happening, because in simple terms, your brain biochemistry is out of balance. You don't have enough certain amino acids, which build certain so-called neurotransmitters. So let's talk like serotonin and dopamine because those are more common, like maybe household names. So if you don't have enough serotonin, you will be depressed. You will be dependent on like times of the year, like you'll be sun or lack of it dependent. You will be anxious. You might have even some chronic pains. You might be a perfectionist and rigid in your thinking. You might not sleep well because serotonin at night turns into melatonin. And in the second half of the day and in the evening and at night, you'll be craving different substances. So for somebody, those are sweets. For somebody, those are some certain carbs. And for somebody, it can be even alcohol because alcohol is a carb itself. Because all those carbs make your brain buzz. And for a quick period of time, you will get that relief. So if you're low on serotonin, it will make you happy. If you're low on dopamine, you might get like energy surge.
Mhm.
If you're low on endorphins, and those are our own like natural painkiller system, you might feel that feeling of anesthesia, of comfort, of somebody hugging you. And if you're low on GABA, and GABA is a gamma aminobutyric acid, is our natural tranquilizer. Then when you have that's what a lot of people do. They, let's say, drink alcohol, you feel relaxed. And I know even a doctor who drinks to get himself to fall asleep. I mean, this is not, of course, a healthy habit, but this is what different people do. Those are called coping strategies.
Mm. Yeah, I know. I used to drink socially growing up. I haven't drank in a long time. But I do remember that never did anything for me. Like I always felt like if I had even like half a glass, I would just fall asleep. And everybody around me having more than that and like still being the life of the party. And I'm like, what's going on with me? So I guess that's really telling also of what was happening for me, of why I have that reaction or had that reaction when I had something to drink.
Right, right. So, whatever drug you choose, and again, I'm sorry for using the word drug, even though sugar, people say
Yeah.
it's a deal, right? But let's call it drug because for your brain, it doesn't really matter if there's meth, coke, or sugar.
Hmm.
It's all, causing those biochemical reactions in your brain. So again, people just choosing different drugs depending on their preferences, but pretty much they work on a similar pathways.
Yeah, we were talking about this. That I was saying that when people you were explaining that when people drink, for example, and some of them think that okay, I can do it with help, or I can stop with help, or without help, and then also with like hard drugs, but with sugar, we don't think that. Can you talk and expand a little bit more on that? Because I thought
Well,
it
of
was so
course,
good.
of course, and you know that there's similar kind of like sentiments, anywhere in the world. I grew up in Lithuania, so people would very negatively look at so-called alcoholics, and some people would consider them like maybe sick, but that would be a minority. Most people just would look down at them as for somebody who has like no willpower, right?
Hmm.
But already in a society is common knowledge and understanding and kind of empathy towards people who are using hard drugs. And most people would agree that those addicts, they have no control over their behavior, right? And we're kind of like more forgiving towards them, right?
Hmm.
Definitely, I would have this, this attitude. But then when it comes to sugar, the most universally used drug and or carbs, right? here we say, well, what's a big deal? Everybody likes sweets, and just let them, just let children be children, just let's celebrate, so on and so forth. So there's some sort of like societal opinion that influences how sugar addiction is treated in our society. But also, not only from that standpoint, it's interesting. Like health insurances, both sides of the ocean, they cover all the rehabs for again I'm not sure it's like how to say what they cover, what they do not, in each
Hmm.
country, but like generally speaking, they would help people with tobacco or alcohol addiction, regardless who's paying for that. But still, health insurances do not recognize sugar addiction as an addiction again. So it's even on that level, it's still sort of like, oh, it's not a problem, it's not a big deal. But if you look at the American population, and since I started like following low carb diets in 2017, so almost 10 years, and I started going to conferences, and very first stats we got from, and it already was 5+ years ago, that 88% of American population, they are metabolically unhealthy. So they either have pre-diabetes, which is insulin resistant, or full-blown diabetes. And those are kind of like just variations of metabolic disease, because it's not only diabetes that it's a metabolic disease or insulin resistance, but cardiovascular disease or cancer or, God forbid, dementia. Those are all metabolic diseases. Meaning, if we look at the problem from another side, it's just like it's totally preventable. In many cases, it's even reversible. So, human body, thank God, is really built, in a very strong fashion, maybe like a tank. So the moment you try to change your nutrition, it's so happy to play along and really start repairing itself. So this is kind of message that I bring to people. If you already know that you have some health issues or you're afraid to develop them, if you look at your parents or grandparents, right, where like your weak spots are, and then you're thinking about, oh, I should change my nutrition, and you try to do so, right? New Year resolutions, here you come. But then you see that it's really hard on you, and of course, you will be having those carb or sugar cravings, but just know that this is a sign that your brain biochemistry is out of order. You might be low in serotonin, and might be low in dopamine and other like endorphins, GABA. And then it's a process. It's a repairable process. And again, don't be sad about it. It just means that you need to get help, and you can do it yourself if you get a book, or you can work with the expert like me and save yourself time and money. So it's doable. It's fixable.
I love that you're bringing this up to the light because I believe that so many of us, especially in this type of community, are aware of the damages that sugar can do. But at the same time, it is an addiction, and it's something that because it hasn't been recognized like globally, like like tobacco has now, but before it wasn't, right?
Right.
That it's that we kind of like are really hard on ourselves for like not being able to stop ourselves. Like, what's wrong with me? Instead of like, oh, there actually is something that is missing within me that I can help, and then that will fix that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
I was sharing this with you earlier. I'm gonna share with the audience. I think this was like 2 years ago, maybe even 3 years ago. I did a full cleanse and resetting. I did a who was it? I think it was Wild Fit. I did this Wild Fit diet with you just going back to eating the things that people eat on the wild, right? So you're not having any carbs or anything like that, except for like maybe some berries. And I completely reset my body, and it was amazing. And I think I was on it for like 6, 7 weeks, and it was right leading up to Christmas, the holidays, just like now. And then, of course, I started baking for the family. And I was like, well, just one little cookie, right? And I had one little bite. I was like, oh, that was so good, right? And then I had to finish it. And then I had to go back for another. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can't stop it. I can't stop. And I was like, okay, today. It's just today, that's fine. And then the next day, I had to start with that. I had to start with the carb. Even though my brain was telling me, hey, like you were doing great. You were off the carbs. Your body is feeling so much better, the clarity, all the things. I know these things, right, in my brain, yet I couldn't stop. And then I remember, and I'm going to share this. It was like 6 weeks later, I still had not stopped. And every day was like, I'm studying today. I'm doing it today, every day. And it was not happening. And I'm like, what's going on? And it was so difficult to go back to the part of like, I'm gonna remove this from my life again, from my diet, I should say. And I started putting it together. I'm like, this is must be kind of like when Alcoholic Anonymous go, right? Like they're off the alcohol, but if they have one little bit, they can just relapse. I'm like, that's how I felt with the sugar.
Yeah,
With
yeah. I'm afraid you're still at the kind of like a vulnerable stage. And
Yeah.
again, just because I am saying you might belong those neurotransmitters.
Hmm.
So every little trigger, it's like an allergy.
Yeah.
It's not the pollen that it's at fault. It's your immune system that it's out of order, that you react to everything, right? So when I work with clients, I'm really like rebuilding their, in a way, resilience by rebuilding their brain biochemistry. Once you are fine on your serotonin levels,
Hmm.
and when I work, let's say, with people who are, like holistic practitioners, such as psychologists, sometimes they have just like teeny tiny symptoms because they already worked on themselves for quite a
Hmm.
bit. So that's a very short period of time that we need to be together. But if somebody was like a sugar craver since their childhood and it's been like so for 50, 40, 30 years, of course we'll work a little bit longer. But at the end of the day, when you rebalance your brain biochemistry, your cravings go away, your sleep is restored, you're calmer, like your anxiety goes away. Like before doing this therapy on my own, I did not really know that I had that background, like I call it default low grade anxiety,
Uh-huh.
because I just didn't feel it. You kind of like so much get used to your symptoms, and
Hmm.
this is probably like human nature, so you don't register them anymore.
Yeah.
But then when something big happens, like duh, then you get super like really anxious. Now I'm a super calm person. It's really hard to, you have to do a lot to piss me off. So this is also all the so-called like side effects
Uh-huh.
of amino acid therapy, because I cannot just like remove only your sweet craving without fixing other things. It's a good side effect of therapy.
So how, let's say like 50 years ago, right, when foods were not as terrible as they are now, especially here in the States, um, so depleted, I should say, from the nutrients. Is this something that we were able to fix or not have depleted from our bodies just by eating the right foods?
Totally, totally, totally. So here's what I learned from Julia Ross, and she's inventor, author of this methodology, that when the American government in the 70s declared a war on fat, right?
Yeah,
People started eating more carbs. That everybody knows that, right? But let me ask you a simple question. Fat is attached to what? Like if you think of,
like
it's
yeah, like a meat, like a
exactly
protein.
like think of a nice ribeye,
Yeah.
right? So so when the fat was prohibited, people consciously and unconsciously cut back on eating protein. So
Mm.
it's not a coincidence, really, that from those times our metabolic health started deteriorating, but also mental health. So it's coincided with increase in all mental issues, started from depression, anxiety, and actually like more serious mental disease.
Wow. So, okay, so now that we are where we are, with the knowledge that
Right.
we have, how do we fix it? What can we
Well,
do?
well, well, you can move to Texas, of course, right? Because
Yes.
I was just discussing that another day with my sons, and obviously in the places where people traditionally ate and continue to eat a good amount of protein, meat, right? Uh, People would be less nutrient deficient. And I think if you imagine, like in your mind, a picture of a cattle farmer, it's going to be a big, strong, and a calm guy, really, right? So vegan states probably not so much, again, because, people that surround you probably influence your eating choices. Now that I'm in Switzerland for last 5 years, it's really amazing for me to see how active people are here. So most of them are in a pretty good shape. They're not overweight. And this is what I really remember from my earlier visits and when I lived in the United States. You would see like grandparents hiking with their grandchildren, and it's
Hmm.
or even grandparents hiking on their own. This is like super super common. So people keep themselves like in a good shape. So of course it's also nutrition, and even though here too nutrition is advised to eat less meat and fewer eggs, but let's say I don't think people in villages listen much to those messages. So yes, please take a look at your nutrition and understand that not only carbs are bad, but proteins, they're very good, and we have to pay more attention to how much protein we eat. There should be protein in each and every meal. If you have children, teach them about it and really watch how much protein you serve to your children and also to your husbands, because down the road, they will be more metabolically healthy. We women are really in charge what we put on the table. I think this is what it is.
So when you're saying have enough protein, I always have confusion over this part because there's so many different people giving different things. I know a lot of people on the fasting community talk about if you want to lose weight or get to a specific weight, you need to have the amount of pounds you want in ounces of protein. And I'm like, what does that even mean? Like, I know it's very simple, but to me, I'm like, well, how much actual food? Like, do I need to be like measuring this on the scale? Like, what is enough? Because let's say somebody wants to go to like 130 pounds, that's 130 ounces of meat. Like, what does that look like? That's what I want to
Right.
know.
Right. And see, that's why I love my carnivore diet because it's super simple. And again, I started with the ketogenic diet, which was a diet that was designed for epilepsy treatment, like
Yes.
resistant epilepsy, right? And then since it derived from there, the focus was on being in a deeper ketosis, which was meaning that you would have to eat more fat versus protein. So again, you're in a deeper so-called ketosis. But it's really not super easy to follow. I mean, but you can, of course, depending on what goals you have. So let's say I have a friend who suffered from migraine and she was facing a choice, go on a like pretty much heavy duty drugs that I used for epilepsy, or she thought, let me try that ketogenic diet. And that's what she did. So she definitely needs to be somewhere in that, area. But let's say if you take somebody like me who is like generally healthy, I knew from the very beginning, from medical school, even before that, it's really you as a person who's responsible for your health, and
Mm.
this is how it is. Don't count on doctors unless it's some medical emergency. So anyhow, I think somebody like me should be eating along the lines of low carb diet because we don't really need carbs. I talked about it. There are no essential carbs. And depending on the level of your metabolic health, again, if we look at children, healthy children, they can get away with more carbs because, they're running, doing
They're running.
sports, or just like generally speaking, they're healthier, so they can tolerate higher amount of carbs compared to us women of menopause age, and here we have to be extra careful, especially if we already have some metabolic issues, right? So it really depends on a person, and it really depends on your goals. So that goal that you mentioned, again, uh, I really don't like to count anything. And again, this is what I
Uh-huh.
love about carnivore because you cannot, like, some people, like Dr. Sean Baker, who's like one of the most famous carnivore doctors in the United States, he says, yes, you can overeat meat, but most people cannot. And
Because you're
there's
full, you feel full.
exactly. So I would just go by that. There's the carnivore coach, Kelly Hogan, who's been a carnivore for 20 plus years. So what she was doing when she was losing her massive amount of weight, she was just keeping it very simple, like burger patties. You
Mm.
cannot, or some people say, like do egg, so-called egg fast. You cannot totally overeat eggs. So at some point you will stop. So this is, you arrive to the point where you really become intuitive about your eating. And of course you can then play with amount of fat and protein, and some people do that, and by and large, generally speaking, if you just would eat those so-called boring carnivore foods, most people are fine. It's hard to overeat. Satiety really stops them, and that's where carbs are so evil because you can have seconds and thirds and eat the yeah and eat the plate too on which it was served.
Yeah, I love the way you said that carbs are so evil. Like, yes, they are. When I was in my 20s, I went on the Atkins diet.
And this is actually a good diet. This is like the beginning of low carb diets
Yes,
in the
yes.
United States. Yeah.
And I remember that it was hard for me. And I think, I don't know, I might have lasted 8 days. And then I just couldn't keep it up. And then I just had to eat regular food, which to me was carbs, right?
Right, right,
And I felt like it had completely messed me up metabolically, like my body was not working the same. And I never actually really felt well back then with that. It's different now. Like now that when I've done like water fast and stuff, it feels very different because I do feel lighter. I feel clearer. Back then, I didn't. I don't even remember what I ate, but I do remember that I was doing Atkins and it was mostly meat and I was miserable. Why would that happen? And how can we do this type of diet in a way that is easier for us or that
hmm
feels like it can be sustainable
right,
and not like I am so tired of this. I'm really craving a fruit because I was really big on fruits. I mean, I would eat like 10 pieces of fruit a day back in the
right,
day, and that was like a
right,
good thing, I thought. But apparently
right.
not. If it's like 10 oranges.
No, not so much. And again, it's very palatable, so I get you. And I never was like a sugar addict really, but
Hmm.
no, it's sweets, they t taste nicely. I get it. I understand you. So every time when you try to switch to a low carb diet or to fast, because it's kind of like a similar process,
Hmm.
you remove the carbs, which work as a masking tape for our brain.
Hmm.
So, as I mentioned before, all the carbs, alcohol included, they temporarily buzz our brain in a simple term. So they temporarily raise levels of serotonin, dopamine, whatever. And whatever you're low on, you get those beneficial effects. So those are kind of like universal drugs. So let's say if you're low on serotonin, you become happy. Oh, and you were sad before. You kind of like can think about yourself, what kind of reactions those, let's say, fruit gave you, right?
Hmm.
Or, again, somebody, we already know that alcohol gives people anesthesia.
Hmm.
And that would be for people who low on their own endorphins. And actually for teenagers who cut themselves, right?
Yep.
That actually causes burst of endorphins. So you can suspect that these children, teenagers, that would be low in endorphins, and so on and so forth. So you can really look at the that favorite, drug-like substance, most commonly food, is for person, and I can kind of like guess what kind of neurotransmitters they might be low on.
Amazing. So when someone comes to work with you, for either sugar or any other type of imbalance that you can help them with,
Yeah.
um, where do they start? Like how do they do that?
So we start with diagnostics. So here's the good news. I do not require you to spend like $1,000 on doing lab work. I work like old-fashioned way with symptoms. So I have a questionnaire that Julia Ross developed, and thanks to her, we can correlate the symptoms that you have with the neurotransmitter imbalances that you would also have. So let's say low serotonin has 13 symptoms. I already mentioned them. And low dopamine has its own symptoms. And based on that, we can start. Actually, this is also very interesting because I can get like miraculous results right in front of a person. We start the process what's called trialing amino acids, which means by looking at you and let's say I say, oh, you're low in serotonin. I still do not know what dose of amino acid tryptophan you need.
Hmm.
So I tell you to open the capsule, put the powder under your tongue, we'll wait for 5 minutes, and all of a sudden your symptoms start going away. It's
Wow.
it's it's almost like unbelievable, and this is why they call them amazing aminos. Because literally just a matter of few minutes, your symptoms start to diminish, and based on how quickly they start to diminish, we determine the dose. Is it one capsule, two capsules, sometimes three or four? And then you have your dose, but amino acids only work for 4 hours. So we
Hmm.
need to make sure that you would take those amino acids for quite some time. Usually it's a matter of few weeks. I would rather say most commonly like a few months. But if
Hmm.
you think about it, it took you years to develop those deficiencies. And with amino acids, which available right now in a so-called free form as supplements, those are not drugs, that they're supplements, we can replenish those deficiencies. So this is part of the therapy that I do as an expert. I tailor that for you. So we make this process fun and quick. But on the other hand, we need to look at your protein intake. So most people do not have enough protein in their diet.
Hmm.
And when that happens, and as we age, our stomach, and other juices, we produce less of them. So our digestive system also slows down. And here we also use some supplements to kind of restart the process so you can digest the beautiful steak that you will be eating. Maybe not for breakfast, but definitely more often than before you met me.
Wow. I love it. And I just looked at the time and it's 11:11. So there's your confirmation angel number. I love these confirmations. Right when you finish talking about that. Um, it sounds very miraculous and it sounds like the answer to so many people's sugar addiction. And I mean, I believe that most of the illnesses and diseases that are out there are beginning with some type of food addiction and specifically sugar because it's just so available and everybody likes it. um, and creating the inflammation that then leads to some type of other disease or other autoimmune. So this feels really aligned. And also because it's not a drug, it's a supplement. How is it that we haven't heard so much more about this?
The answer is very simple. How come you not heard of, let's say, healing power of nutrition? So, still ketogenic diet and carnivore are being looked like down at by most of the medical community. So we do not study nutrition almost in medical schools. Oh, maybe even whatever even I studied, it's still kind of like outdated, not applicable, and everything that I'm telling you today, I learned on my own by going to conferences and learning from physicians who are, practicing low carb and reversing metabolic disease in their patients. Because when I went to medical school, it was ingrained into me that diabetes, and I'm talking about type 2 diabetes, it's a
Mhm.
chronic progressive disease. And when I lived in Silicon Valley, and when I read in the newspaper that a chiropractor is promising to reverse your diabetes type 2, and I'm like, what is this? He's a quack, right? And now
Hmm.
I'm doing pretty much the same. And I'm helping people to make their change of nutrition painless because it's not like everybody needs me. No, some people are able, let's say they didn't have many cravings to begin with, they change their diet and they never look back. But some people do need help. And sometimes people who practice carnivore, they also have like spontaneous, well, most of the time, if people do it for health reasons, they have like spontaneous remission of many disease, including autoimmune disease. And this is why, this is why when I learn about carnivore diet, I'm like, this is ultimate diet because this is actually like ultimate elimination diet.
Mm.
So you can go down to like beef and water and then start reintroducing foods and see what is okay with you and what is not and what do you react to. So then you will be like aware of what foods can be problematic for you, right? So again, simple things like this, they're not part of medical community. And then of course, about lobby, about big pharma, about big food, and the same scientists who work for tobacco companies went to work for big food companies,
Mm.
and big pharma profits from that. So of course I'm very hopeful for Bobby Kennedy Jr. I just love him to death, and this is how a good Secretary of Health should look like. And this is how a good doctor should look like. Definitely healthy, not unhealthy. And then you know whom to listen to. So by and large, the methodology that I use, it's been known for like 35, 40 years. It's been used in serious addiction centers. But there is no big pharma behind it. There are no patents because it's just a methodology. And, I'm just working with clients one-on-one. I'm teaching doctors now. So this is very exciting because they're like becoming ambassadors of this method. So together we can help more people. But if you would focus on protein to begin with and also focusing on reducing amount of carbs, you'll be healthy without even specialists like me.
I have one question that just came up for me, which is there's a lot of people who are in doing a lot of healthy things for themselves and they're using protein powders. What are your thoughts and feelings about those?
Actually, all proteins powders are not like equal, and they're probably look at the ingredients, look what kind of protein powder it is and where it's coming from. Again, because I'm revolving in that carnivore community, guess what? Now you can buy a carnivore bar.
Wow.
Right, right. Maybe even like apple pie flavor. Do I buy this for myself? No, because once you switch to a low carb diet, you basically just eat twice a day. You don't snack anymore because your blood sugar levels are
Hmm.
equal. But when my children were younger and I would travel with them, definitely I would buy something like that, kind of like a healthier. So you can buy like meaty snacks, right? And so yeah, you can totally do something like that. But yeah.
Amazing. Well, this has been so incredibly informative. I'm very excited about this. I am hoping that anyone who feels called and was interested and is here till the end of this interview reaches out or starts doing some type of change in their own on their own, whether it's getting a book or just changing to carnivore or more protein to begin to see the changes. Where and how can people find you,
Well,
Regina?
as I'm saying, I'm everywhere. I'm an international person. I work in English and Russian languages, Lithuanian as well, and learning French as we speak. So I have a website, stopsugarcravings.ch, and I am on Instagram and Facebook, TikTok a little bit. Have to start my YouTube account, so that's in the works. And I'm really appreciative of this opportunity to share a message of hope, a message of good nutrition, And if you start a day with a good protein-rich breakfast, then your life might be just brighter and happier and healthier.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And of course, I'm going to put all the information for Regina so you can get in touch with her on the notes. So if you're driving or you just didn't get it, by listening, it's going to be there for you to reach out. So, with that, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom. Thank you for what you're doing to help people get healthier and better. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Valeria.
Thank you. Bye bye.